Hello and welcome to the Trib Friday Night Podcast. I'm Chad Conine along with Trib Sports Editor Bryce Cherry. We're in the Super Centex studios this afternoon where there will be no talking about electoral votes, mail-in ballots, swing states.
Except you just did.
Or any of those types of things. Any more talk about them.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm addressing the fact that we're not going to talk about it.
Gotcha.
But we are gonna vamp for a while and keep you from eating your lunch.
Well played.
Just before we hit record, Bryce was saying he hadn't eaten his lunch yet, and he played a lot of basketball. So that's kind of a him problem, though, if you ask me.
My favorite swing state is Nevada because I mean that's where they went in swingers. Vegas, baby.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Swing state.
Yeah, and it's known for gambling, and it just all fits, right?
Yeah, sure.
In fact, we should just make whatever state Nevada elects, that's the winner.
We should bring back a couple of our Vegas dudes, Jim Barnes and Jason Orris, as guests on the podcast sometime.
That's a good idea. But here we have talked about swing states and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right, go on.
We'll move on. I'm guessing you are like me that you prefer to talk about high school football over politics, whether it's November 3rd or August 3rd or whatever. Am I right in thinking that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So give me one reason why.
I'll give you two.
Okay.
And I could come up with a million, but I'll give you two. One, high school football matters more often than politics. It matters more than once every 4 years. And I think there's probably politicians out there that would say that politics matters more often than once every 4 years. But that's one reason. And then I also feel like, all right, even in high school football, there's rivalries and there's dislike of each other and stuff. But I somehow think it's a lot more cordial than it is in the world of politics, where
Can be.
Yeah, I mean, coaches especially are not gonna publicly mudsling.
That's true. You see the opposite of mudslinging.
Yeah, you see them sort of go out of their way to be effusive in their praise.
There needs to be an opposite word of mudslinging.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to come up with that.
Sandbagging, I guess, would be a close.
Sandbagging is a good way to put it.
It's not 1-to-1. It's not a direct opposite.
Right. It's the classic Lou Holtz tactic,
right,
where the team you're playing is the greatest team ever. And, So, yeah, coaches tend to do that. But I still prefer that to just the venom of politics.
Sure. I'll say another thing is that you always have a result, on a Friday night. Or 99.99% of the time you have a result on
Yeah,
Friday
sometimes
night.
you get rain delays and that kind of thing.
And you have to come back on Saturday. That happens about, once every couple of years we'll have a situation like that. But you were in the newsroom on election night. I was watching it at home and doing other things besides just being glued to the TV. But we always laugh, and we'll pull the curtain back a little bit. We always laugh at the news side because what they do on election night once a year is kind of what we do every Friday night.
Not to pat ourselves on the back, Chad, because that's not what we're here to do. But you see it every election that there's always a little saltiness on Twitter from the sports guys out there, because they're like, we do this every Friday and we don't get pizza, Election night pizza's kind of a thing, but I appreciate our newsroom and the news writers and what they do, and Lord knows that election night is chaotic and complicated because it isn't just a simple, this team outscores this other team. There's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of things hanging in the balance besides.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair enough.
For this podcast, we should call you Dangling Chad.
Oh, Lord.
You went the politics route.
I was hoping we could get through it without that. In fact, I was hoping to get through this whole election cycle without that.
Remember the Chads?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I bet that was a fun time for you. Go Go on.
It's like,
please save us.
It's like when you walk into church on the Sunday morning and you're a kid and some old fogey goes, "Hey there, working hard or hardly working?"
So you're criticizing my jokes now. Okay.
All right, football. We talked about it the other day over text message. Zach Hrbacek of Troy, star running back there, our reigning Super Centex Offensive Player of the Year, is 154 yards away from catching Traion Smith, Cameron Yo for the Central Texas career rushing record. Troy plays Academy on Friday in a game they need to win to get in the playoffs. I mean, he gets it, right, on Friday?
I think so. I mean, we talked about it earlier this year on the podcast. I think you said he was averaging $190, 200?
No, over 200.
Over 200.
More like 240.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, 154, he might get that in the first half. In a game that they've got to win. And, he missed a game in there, or else he'd already have the record. I mean...
yeah, definitely. I mean, it was against Caldwell, who's at the bottom of that district, so...
Yeah, so I think he picks it up, and I think Troy also probably wins that game and gets into the playoffs. I mean, they're not as good as they were last year. They had Hrbacek and a pretty solid, stout defense last year. I think they've taken a little bit of a step back from that, but I think the district's better. I mean, the district is so good, and so if they do get in, I mean, they could make a run. Anybody in that district could make a run.
Well, their schedule for the most part was tougher this year than it was last year, I think. And you're right. I mean, anybody in that district is a tough out.
Yeah.
And gosh, one thing that I didn't put down on our script, but I mean, look at the McGregor Bulldogs. Did you have pegged them for a playoff team out of that district?
Well, we've talked about it all season that they had the potential, and would the potential meet the production, and it has. I mean, I think they've grown up in a big way, and I think it also shows the importance of a second season under a coach. I think that second year a lot of times is big because the familiarity is there. You have a comfort level now with that head coach. You kind of know what he expects. You know the system, and a lot of times you'll see a jump from year one to year two.
Okay, so we're here at the end of the regular season. It's taken us this far into the podcast to talk about this, but this is week 11 for 1A through 4A.
Indeed.
And in fact, this is the Friday night where I start to get really nervous about 5:30 that I'm running late because it's already getting dark.
Yes.
And I'm used to it getting dark while I'm already at the stadium.
Time change, that throws everybody off.
This week I'll be driving to Rockdale with photo editor Rod Adelot, so I don't know if that'll calm me down or make me more tense. But,
talk about showing people behind the curtain.
Next week we might talk about odds to win a state title and what that looks like.
Sure.
But for this week, it's, I guess, kind of the last week of the pound-for-pound rankings.
Yes, and so my shakeup is this. 1 through 5, marked. I mean, they're just that much better than everybody. And I was catching a little bit of a radio interview on my way into the office today, and I think it was Greg Tepper that was on. I never did hear him introduced, so I was sort of speculating, but it sounded like him. And he was talking like, in 3A Division 2, Mart would be a top 5 team. In 3A Division 1, Mart would probably be a top 10 team. And I think those are both fair statements. They are potent, to say the least. And you saw them in person on Saturday against a Bremont team that easily the second best team in that district. A game that everybody sort of pointed to, well, this might be a challenge. What was it, 78-6?
78-6. And
Holy crap.
I think Bremont legitimately aspires to get to the regional final. And maybe there was a little bit of a message sent there. Heck yeah, get to the regional final, but this is what you're going to face.
Yeah, no doubt.
When that happens, I don't know. there's a lot that could be unpacked about how that game got to 78-6. But we'll leave that for maybe another time. It was 50-0 at halftime, and you go to a classification down into 1A Division I. That game's over at halftime.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if I'm putting some other teams in the rankings, let's say 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm going La Vega at the next team after Mart. We've had the Pirates there all year.
They bounced back last week, too.
Yeah, they did. I've got Crawford in that third spot, and then, or seventh, or however we want to say that. And then, of course, I've had China Springs sitting right there, and the Cougars lost an epic game. Again, another game that you got to see last week. Another one that probably took a lot to unpack.
Yeah, definitely.
But
in a different way, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot going on in that game. And, they pick up their second loss. Connally goes for 2 and wins it. Just an incredible game. That may end up being the game of the year in Central Texas. Who knows? I mean, you've seen some good ones.
That was a little bit better than the Troy-McGregor game just because it finished on a high note, where the McGregor-Troy game kind of petered out.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would move Abbott into China Springs spot.
Okay.
And then I'm putting Connally in that last spot now.
Yeah.
And it's been kind of a little bit of an up and down season for Connally. They started out real hot, and and then they played La Vega really well, and we were really impressed with Connally. And then they took a little bit of a backslide, and I think this win over China Spring can be a confidence booster for the cadets, and we'll see what they do in the playoffs. They all do get a little bit of a bye before the
they're off this week.
Yeah,
that
Connally and China, so
now it sets up that district they're going up against. If it shakes out like it stands right now, you got Gatesville against Carthage, which
good luck.
Congrats on making the playoffs, Gatesville.
Right. I mean, and yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Luke Howard's second year, Gatesville makes the playoffs. That's good for the Hornets, but yeah, that's going to be a slaughter.
So then you have the third place China Spring playing state-ranked Jasper in by district.
Wow.
That's one of those like state game of the week type
Yeah,
the
baby.
first week of the playoffs.
Somebody will be covering that one.
Yeah, so one more question while we're at it, just so we can delay you getting your lunch for a little bit. But,
Thank you.
Kavian Gaither makes, I think, 16 tackles in that game, rushes for 200 yards, throws a touchdown pass, and then makes, just the play of the year as far as I've seen it. Pick up a bouncing ball, avoid the rush, and get it away to an open receiver for the 2-point conversion to win the game.
Right.
So Kavian Gaither, and you put that stuff on Twitter, and then obviously, or immediately, I should say, people are tweeting about why is everybody should be recruiting this guy, everybody should want this guy, right? And he's a little undersized to play linebacker, a little, maybe not quite tall enough to be a real effective defensive back. Probably not quite fast enough to be, a Power 5 running back. But he has such a head for the game. He caused a fumble in that game also that was huge for Connally that Trey Wisner ended up recovering, and it stopped a China Spring drive, which China Spring probably could have just salted it away if they had scored there. But he knocks the ball loose, Wisner recovers, and then Connally's moving again. So, I mean, what would you tell a coach from somewhere like, Texas Tech or Iowa State or, kind of your middle of the pack Big 12 type of team about Kavian Gaither if you were trying to talk him into?
I'd probably start comparing him maybe to some undersized guys and other, I don't know that, Zach Thomas isn't a good comparison because Zach Thomas was so thick and he was just...
Well, I think, but Kavian is kind of that way. I mean, not like, he doesn't wear the ring on his shoulder pad like Zach Thomas did,
But I would do that. I'd probably start saying, hey, you've seen this guy, you've seen this guy, you've seen this guy. And the thing they have all in common, they're winners. And they, they made plays. But college coaches are weird, and they'll probably usually take the slightly bigger guy, the slightly faster guy, because they feel like they can shape them and make them a winner.
Right.
But we've seen plenty of guys that were like blue chip prospects that wash out in college football. So to me, it's a shame that guys like Kavian Gaither and I'm again sort of going back years here, but like Jordan Parkes at Rosebud Lot, or I'm trying to think of another one that was like that just was kind of overlooked, and it was always inexplicable to me why that is. And let me ask you a question now.
Okay.
So Kavian, that performance, as you mentioned, incredible. Came on the heels, well done for Kavian, of you writing about two-way players, and very timely.
Right. Yeah.
Usually we jinx those kids, but
no, it was on the money that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Well timed.
I don't get paid extra for that somehow.
Yeah, no doubt. But my question is this. Super Centex Offensive Player of the Year, Super Centex Defensive Player of the Year. Where does Kavian best fit? And I'm not saying he's
a shoe-in for a superlative.
Right, I'm not saying he's a shoe-in because, we have Zach Hrbacek. Rodrell Freeman's going to be in that mix. DeAndre McDaniel at McGregor's had a terrific year with some big stats. But
just keep going. You'll leave somebody out for sure.
Sure, yeah. Emmanuel Abdallah. But where does he best fit when you're talking about that?
I've actually pondered this question just on my own when I'm driving around in an idle hour throughout the day, as we sometimes find. I would probably lean towards defense because just the sheer numbers elsewhere are so much better. You put his numbers up against Hrbacek's numbers. You look at Hrbacek's ability to turn a game on a single play, or at least score anytime he touches the ball, which is, it's almost like we should just have like
a utility player
football
of the year.
player,
yeah,
a football player of the year.
Yeah. There are some publications that have done that, just player of the year,
the Mr. Football type of thing.
Right, and he certainly would be a candidate for that. But no, that's good thinking. When you have a guy on defense that absolutely just makes plays and dominates and that he's out there, because sometimes a guy can get a little lost on defense, in terms of whereas a running back, they're going to get the ball a lot, and but when a guy on defense is like a player, to me that says a lot.
Well, it's just, I made the basketball comparison with him, and it was just like watching basketball, because early in the game they throw a pass down the field to Jordan Navarez, and Gaither has really good position on him. It just couldn't quite reach up and knock the ball away, and Navarez catches the ball for a big first down. And so, then you get beat on a play, just like you get beat to the basket, every now and then, right? And then you turn around in the second half, and he's knocking a ball loose that's a key turnover, and he's making the play on the offensive end that wins the game. So, I think he's going to be one that we debate probably on both sides. And he might not end up getting either one,
He might not. I'd be hard-pressed to believe that he wouldn't make the team.
Well, he'll be on the team.
Yeah.
He'll be on the team somewhere.
Yeah.
Gosh, we've covered a lot of ground today.
That's okay. People, this is what they tune in for, Chad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess I'll just this one last question that I have is worth asking, because it's interesting. Teague and Fairfield, big rivals.
Mm-hmm.
I've been sorting through all the district scenarios, and Teague and Fairfield end up playing for basically fourth place in their district. Now, Fairfield, if they lose by less than 3, could still that would bump somebody else. That would bump Kemp out of the playoffs, and Teague and Fairfield would make it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
So, if you were playing and you got one win on the year, which I think both those teams do, and you were playing to get into the playoffs, with your second win of the year, or just you put COVID season behind you and go right into basketball COVID season, what would you pick?
I mean, you got to play to win. Man. You play to win. And here's the thing. So I was talking with John Bechtel earlier this year at one point, and somehow through the course of this conversation, the Fairfield Teague rivalry came up, and he was just like, it's gonna be crazy, it's gonna be crazy in week 11. It's
last week of the season.
that is the game, that's the one, and he was just talking that rivalry up, and I was like, well, isn't Mahia kind of that rivalry for you guys too? And he was like, Teague, man. I mean, it's just like, I guess people in Fairfield and Teague, and they haven't often, sometimes, but they haven't always been in the same
district. It's not
district.
a guarantee that they're in the same district at all.
Right.
Because
but they are
again. Last time,
yeah. And so I think that's, revived the rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they're going to want to win. And, I can't see Donnie Osborne or John Bechtel doing this, but we've heard stories of, rivals and it came down to a playoff spot or whatever, and like the opposing coach mailing a basketball through the mail to the other coach or whatever. I don't think they would do that.
Those two towns are close enough where you wouldn't need to put it in the mail. You just carry a basketball bag over and put it on the other coach's doorstep.
Sure.
I'll tell you one thing about that rivalry. It's somewhat close to my heart. I call them my second family, and the Webbs that I grew up at their house. Even though I had a perfectly good house myself, I had two sisters and there were three brothers over there, so I go over their house a lot. Anyway, Mr. Webb, Danny Webb went to Teague High School, and Mrs. Webb, Nelma Webb, went to Fairfield.
Oh,
Danny played football at Teague, and Nelma was a cheerleader at Fairfield. And there's a lot of that in Teague and Fairfield, a lot of intermarrying between the two towns.
They're not cousins, are they?
No. Oh, thanks.
We're off the rails again.
All right, well, that's the Super Centex podcast. Come back next week.